Hey, let me tell you a story. I have lived in the same apartment block for over 10 years, long enough to know every creak of the stairwell, every face in the hallway, and every door that slams a little too hard. In all that time, one man has never changed. He lives on the third floor, alone, no family, no visitors. I have never seen him during the day, only at night, when the corridors are dark and the only light comes from the green emergency lamps. He walks slowly, never rushing, wearing the same dark coat no matter the season. Even in the middle of summer, his apartment window is always cracked open, even when snow is falling, even when the wind pushes leaves into the hallway. There is something about him that makes people lower their voices when they pass his door. Not because he has done anything loud or aggressive, but because he feels like someone you should not disturb. The building itself is old, the kind with a basement you have to unlock with a rusty key. Most people avoid it. The smell is damp, and the floor is always wet as if the walls themselves are sweating. I have only gone down there a few times, to store boxes or look for something I thought I left behind years ago. The neighbor never speaks in the hallways, but sometimes when I am walking up the stairs late at night, I can hear a faint sound from behind his door. Not music, not television, just a low hum, like someone breathing slowly into the walls. It was easy to ignore him, until the new guy moved into the apartment directly across from mine. He was young, maybe mid-20s, and loud in the way only someone new to the building can be, slamming his door, laughing on the phone, dragging furniture late into the night. I saw the neighbor from the third floor watching him once, leaning on the railing of the stairwell, eyes fixed without blinking. 1 week later, the new guy was gone. No goodbye, no moving truck, no noise. His door just stayed closed. His mailbox overflowed with junk mail. The landlord said he must have left in the middle of the night. I did not believe it. It was around that time that I started noticing more about the third floor neighbor. He carried things down to the basement at odd hours. Heavy things, wrapped in black plastic. He would disappear for 20 minutes and return without them. His shoes left faint wet marks on the concrete hallway, like he had been standing in water. Once, at around 2 in the morning, I woke to the sound of something dragging along the floor above me. Long, slow movements that stopped for a few seconds before starting again. The next morning, the hallway smelled faintly metallic. I told myself it was just the pipes. Days later, I was taking the trash out when I saw him at the far end of the hall. He was standing perfectly still, his head tilted slightly, watching me. I kept walking, trying not to look, but the weight of his stare followed me all the way to the elevator. That night I decided to go down to the basement. I do not know what I was expecting. Maybe just to prove to myself there was nothing there. The corridor down there is narrow. The light bulbs flicker. The walls are lined with old wooden doors, each leading to a storage unit. Most are empty or full of dusty boxes, but one door stood out. It had a new lock, a thick steel padlock, and a fresh metal latch bolted into the frame. I put my ear against it and froze. There was breathing. Slow, steady, but not asleep. Like someone was aware of me standing there. I stepped back. The breathing stopped. I left quickly, heart pounding. The following day, the landlord knocked on my door. He said there had been complaints about water in the basement. He wanted to check the pipes. I went with him, and when we reached the bottom, I saw the door with the padlock again, now locked with a different chain, newer, heavier. I told him about the breathing I had heard before, but he just shook his head, said I must have been mistaken, that no one had used that storage room in years. I wanted to believe him, but I could not. The next day, I told another neighbor about it. He agreed to come down with me that night, but when we got there, the door was open, the lock was gone, the inside was completely empty. Just damp concrete walls and a single chair in the middle of the room. As we stood there, a drop of water, fell from the ceiling and landed in the dust, making a small dark spot. That was when I saw it. A small scrap of fabric caught in the hinge, dark red. We left without speaking. That night I could not sleep. Every sound from the hallway felt too close, too deliberate. I sat in the dark listening for footsteps. At some point I must have dozed off, because I woke to the faint sound of a door closing. I looked through the peephole, but saw only the dim hallway and the far shape of the neighbor disappearing up the stairs. The following evening, I avoided the elevator. I did not want to be trapped in that small space if he was inside. I took the stairs, and halfway up I heard the sound of slow footsteps above me, matching my pace. I stopped. The steps stopped. I went up one more flight. They started again. When I reached my floor, I turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. That was the first night I put a chair under my door handle. I stayed awake until morning, listening. Every creak in the building sounded heavier than it should have. Every shadow from the streetlight seemed longer than before. I told myself it was paranoia, but deep down I knew something had changed. He knew I had been to the basement. He knew I had told someone else, and he was not going to forget it. The next few days, I tried to keep my distance. I left for work earlier, came back later, timed my movements so I would not run into him. But it did not matter. He was always there. Sometimes just a glimpse at the end of the hallway. Sometimes a shadow moving behind the frosted glass of the stairwell door. I started noticing other strange things. The elevator would arrive at my floor even when I had not called it, the doors opening slowly to reveal an empty car. My doormat was sometimes damp, as if someone had poured water over it. My kitchen window, which overlooked the courtyard, began to feel like a weak point. At night I would close the curtains tightly, but I could still sense him down there, standing somewhere in the dark. The tension built until one night, just after midnight, I heard my name whispered, not loud, not urgent, just enough to make my skin crawl. It came from the hallway. I froze, listening. It came again, closer this time. My first instinct was to grab my phone and call someone, but I knew it would be too late if I did. I slid the chair under the handle again and sat on the floor, my back against the wall, staring at the door. The whisper stopped, replaced by slow breathing. I could hear it through the thin wood. I held my breath, every second stretching longer than it should. Then came the sound of something soft sliding against the door, like a hand pressed flat, moving slowly from top to bottom. It lasted less than a minute, but felt like an hour. When it stopped, I waited, not moving, until the first light of morning filtered through the curtains. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty, but a small wet footprint was just inside my doorway. Too precise to be an accident. I cleaned it away, but I could not shake the feeling that it was a message. That night I dreamed I was in the basement again, standing in front of that door, hearing the breathing. I woke to find my apartment colder than usual. My window open. I was sure I had locked it. The curtains moved slightly in the breeze, and for a moment I thought I saw a figure reflected in the glass, standing behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing. The next evening, I decided to leave early for the night. I packed a bag and headed for the elevator. The doors opened, and he was there, inside, standing completely still, water dripping from his coat onto the floor. I stepped back without thinking. He did not move, did not speak. The doors began to close, but just before they did, he smiled, a slow, deliberate movement. I took the stairs down 3 flights without stopping. My plan was to spend the night at a friend's place, but as I stepped outside, I saw him again, standing across the street under a flickering street light, watching me. I turned the corner quickly and did not look back. I stayed away for 2 days, but when I returned, the black plastic bag was waiting at my door again, wet and tied with string. This time I opened it. Inside was a piece of damp fabric, dark red, and a single old key. I dropped it instantly, slamming my door shut. I knew without checking that the key would fit the basement lock. The night after, I woke to the sound of my door unlocking, the click of the mechanism soft but unmistakable. I held my breath, the chair under the handle shaking slightly as pressure pushed against it. The movement stopped, and then I heard footsteps. Retreating down the hallway, I waited until morning, then went to the third floor. His door was open. I stepped inside. The apartment was empty. No furniture, no lights, just bare walls and a smell of damp concrete. I turned to leave and saw something scratched into the inside of the door. The words, "Your next," carved deep into the wood. I left immediately, my heart pounding. I could not live there anymore. I started making plans to move, but the process took time. During those weeks, I saw him less often, which somehow made it worse. It felt like he was waiting for something, letting me settle into a false sense of safety. One night, I returned home to find my apartment door wide open. I stepped inside cautiously. Everything seemed untouched, until I entered my bedroom. On the bed was the same black plastic bag, this time open, the fabric and key gone, replaced by a photograph. It showed me, standing at my kitchen window. The image taken from outside at night. I could see my own reflection in the glass. My hands shook as I dropped it. I backed out of the room, grabbed my bag, and left without locking the door. I went straight to a motel across town. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in the corner of the room, every noise outside sounding too close. When I checked out the next morning, I saw a figure at the far end of the parking lot. The same coat, the same stillness. I knew then that leaving the building would not stop him. I moved cities within a week, never told anyone where I was going, changed my phone, my email, everything. For months, I heard nothing. Then one evening I found an envelope under my door. No return address. Inside was a photograph of my new building, taken from the street at night. No one else knew where I lived. The next photo came a week later, showing me leaving my apartment, taken from across the street. I knew he was close. I knew he was patient, and I knew one day I would wake up and see him standing in the dark, waiting. Later that week, I tried to clear my head by going to a grocery store across town, a place I was sure he would never be. I wandered the aisles slowly, avoiding the crowded sections. When I reached the end of the cleaning supplies aisle, I froze. He was there, standing halfway down. No cart, no basket, just staring at me from between two shelves of detergent. His coat was damp again, dripping slightly onto the linoleum floor. I turned sharply into another aisle, my hands shaking, but when I glanced back, the aisle was empty, and the floor where he had stood was dry. I left without buying anything, convinced he had followed me there, just to let me know that nowhere was safe. Subscribe for more stories like this, because the next one might be about your neighbor.